What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Sid Vicious, and today we got the big reveal that we've been waiting for, the brand new Combat Masteries. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for supporting the channel. We hit our first major milestone with 100 subs, and I've been going through each comment and everyone has been super supportive. One thing I'll be working on is upgrading my mic so we get some better audio quality. Now let's get into the Combat Masteries. There's a lot to unpack here. So, what's all the buzz about Combat Masteries for? Well, it's a new progression system that allows players to unlock powerful abilities for the three main combat styles: melee, ranged, and magic. Think of it like a skill tree. You progress tier by tier within each combat style's tree. Here's how it works. You have 10 combat mastery points to allocate however you like across the three trees. But there's a catch. You have to start from the bottom and work your way up, just like a tree. Let's talk about the passive buffs first. These are game changers that you unlock as soon as you progress through the tiers. And guess what? These apply to all combat styles, not just the ones you're specializing in. Tier 1. 95% chance to save weapon charges, ammunition, and runes. This is huge. It means massive savings on resources, especially early game where every rune and arrow counts. This opens up early game teleports a lot since like 5 law runes can go a long way. Tier 2 passive. Healing from all sources is increased by 20%. More HP from your food, potions, and other healing abilities. This is like a mini version of the sunlit bracers and is a nice buff for all stages of the game. Third passive is accuracy for all styles is increased by 100%. Again, nice to have for all styles this time. For the fourth passive, damage taken is reduced by 15%. Imagine being tankier in all your encounters. This is a really nice buff for mages and rangers who normally have weaker defense. For our fifth passive, prayer points gained from all sources are increased by 25%. Your prayer points and restoration methods just got a significant buff. This is like having a fifth dose to your prayer potion. Tier 6 passive is where it gets interesting. Attacks with all styles have 60% prayer penetration. This one is very unique, and we'll dive into why this is a bit later on. Looking at the skill tree, I'm going to just simplify it and just talk about some of the most important things. Going tier by tier, Tier 1 is damage, Tier 2 is damage. Tier 3 is attack rate set to 80% and round down, which is massive, something to focus on later when talking about builds. But the key point here is 7 tick becomes 5 ticks, 6 tick becomes 4 ticks, 5 tick becomes 4 ticks, 4 ticks becomes 3, 3 becomes 2, and 2 becomes 1. Moving on into the Tier 4, this is a form of lifesteal for all of the styles. Tier 5 is again the massive buff for the attack rate, so let's go through it one more time. 7 tick becomes 3 tick this time, 6 tick becomes 3 as well, 5 tick becomes 2 tick, 4 tick becomes 2 tick, 3 tick becomes 2 tick, and finally 2 ticks becomes 1 tick. And for our final tier, Tier 6, we get some interesting damaging effects. The melee one is simply more damage. It has a 20% chance to echo the hit. Essentially, it's a damage increase. The range Tier 6 is very unique as it will make it so range attacks never miss, sort of like death by 1,000 cuts if you're using the blowpipe. And for magic, which brings more damage to high HP bosses and also has a form of a mini execute. There are a lot of things to figure out with these effects, and I could talk about them for hours, but to keep it short, it's damage, damage, speed, heal, speed, damage. So, how do you earn these combat mastery points? There are 10 tasks, and completing them grants you points to spend on these skill trees. Let's break them down here. First, defeat a giant. Second, defeat 10 monsters with a combat level of 100 plus. Defeat Scarius by yourself. Defeat a Slayer monster requiring level 55 Slayer or more. This one I kind of flipped them around, but for some people I think this will be easier, which is reach combat level 100. For 6, defeat Jad in the fight caves. 7, this is now where it starts getting harder. Defeat an Echo Boss. 8 is defeat 2 unique Echo Boss. 9, defeat 3 unique Echo Boss. And finally for 10, defeat Zuck in the Inferno. So the first 6 tasks are pretty straightforward and accessible to most players, but the last 4 ramp up in difficulty, requiring you to take on the new Echo Bosses and even Zuck himself. To speculate here a bit, if we look at this list in forms of difficulty, we may infer that the Echo Bosses are easier than Zuck. But I would look at this lightly as we don't know until we find out for ourselves. Let's get into the fun part of the video, which is planning your build. With 10 points to spend, you got some decisions to make. One popular approach that is going around is the 6-4 split. You max out your main combat style by investing 6 points into unlocking all its abilities and all the passives. Then you spend the remaining 4 points in the off style, boosting its effectiveness as well. Another strategy that I'm looking more closely at is the 5-5 hybrid. Here you split your points evenly between 2 styles, reaching tier 5 in both. This grants you significant power in 2 areas, especially since tier 5 is where you get major attack speed boosts. But I am cautious of the 5-5 hybrid because of the tier 6 passive that we mentioned earlier. Remember that the 60% penetration to prayer, it might be crucial for dealing with the Echo Bosses that might potentially be using prayer. So if you stop at tier 5 in a style, you might struggle against certain bosses. I want to give a quick example using a DPS calculator just to kind of show the power of the 5-5 and why I'm interested in it. So here I have my early game setup, right? This is for my wilderness character. So I just have Rune, with a dragon longsword, and I don't have anything else enabled. I have very weak combat stats, right? So it's just 60 attack, 50 defense, and 70 strength, for example. I don't have any of the prayers enabled, just so we can look at some idea of how it might look with 5 tiers in the melee category. So in the early progression, here you can see that with 5 tiers in melee, our TTK is roughly 102 or 103 seconds. And if we take the 6th relic or 6th tier in melee, we get to 91 seconds. So it's quite a big of a difference. But as we get to the mid-game I just have Darox with the Glory Combat Brace, Dragon Boots, and a Fire Cape as well. Even though we're looking at Jad here, just to kind of get an idea, you can see the damage gap isn't really that crazy, right? It's 60 seconds with our 5 points in melee, and it's 55 seconds with 6 points in melee. Do I have Piety on? No. So no combat boosted, our stats are now 80-80, just to get an example. Now I want to show you another example which shows sort of my max setup, right? So I'm just looking at the gear pieces here. The armor, I don't have it in here. I just want to look at some numbers. And this is our base form on Jad, which is 50 seconds. And then when we look at the second loadout, we use the melee, 5 points in melee, which comes down to 15.6 seconds. And if we look at getting 6 points in melee, well, it only goes up by 14.7. So it is a little more damage, but nothing too crazy. But let's say we do look at a 5-5 setup, and here I have, a range setup, just very basic. Again, nothing boosted. In this particular setup, I have all 99s just because this is my end game setup. But when we look at our points in range, we have 4 points in range, and our TTK is roughly 40 seconds. And if you look at our second loadout using the same setup, you see getting that 5th point in range cuts our TTK in half, giving us 20 seconds. So it's quite big in terms of how much damage we get on 2 different styles if we split it up 5-5. Whereas if we don't, then we're gonna get a big boost, but not as much. Let's talk about some regions that got a significant buffs from the combat masteries from my eyes. Desert region is the perfect for off-style range builds. With the Dragor blowpipe and combat masteries, you can turn this into a 1-tick weapon, which will be a beast in combat for only 3 points in range. And then also, Terranwind gets a massive boost, especially if you're considering a melee ranged hybrid. The Echo item here allows your crystal armor to affect any melee weapon, and combining this with the Bofa is a deadly combo, so you could have an even split of points here and go absolutely berserk. And there's plenty of other regions to look at besides Kandarin, of course. This is a lot of information to take in, and these are just my initial thoughts, and after some research we will see some region combos that are really going to shine. So what am I planning to do? Initially, I was set on the Desert Fremnik regions and with the Zaya as a wildcard, but now I am sort of leaning more towards Zaya because of the Salamander. It's a versatile weapon that's strong across different combat styles, and if I'm going mage, I need some sort of early weapon for mage. There are some arguments to even take 3 points in range early, then take the rest of the points in mage later, once mage is more viable after getting the Salamander from Zaya. My second region picks are Varlamore, Wilderness, and Mortania, and I've been pretty sure about this pick for a while now. Yes, I know Varlamore's Echo Boss is Grandmaster tier, and Zuck is no joke, and I'm planning to go with melee on top of that. But I'm up for the challenge, and I want to have fun with this character and see if the 5-5 idea can work out. I've never taken on Zuck before, but with the combat masteries and careful planning, I think it's time to face the Inferno, and to be honest, it's time for all of us to face the Inferno. Plus, if the Colosseum and Varlamore is doable early, it could open to more possibilities of bossing. To wrap things up, the new combat mastery system forces us to plan and strategize like never before. Here are some key takeaways. Consider your playstyle. Are you looking to go melee, range, or magic? Think about your region synergies. Choose regions that complement your build and offer valuable echo weapons. And also plan for the echo bosses. They might have prayer mechanics, so the tier 6 passive could be essential. I plan on utilizing 5 points in melee and then saving the rest of the points on my Wilderness, Varlamore, Mortania character until I learn more about the echo bosses. I hope this discussion into combat masteries helps you in planning your journey in the new leagues. I'm excited to see what builds everyone comes up with. Let me know in the comments what combat masteries you're leaning towards and why. If you found out this video was helpful, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe for some more OSRS content. As we lead up to the start of the leagues, I will be definitely live streaming on YouTube and looking into setting up a dual stream to Twitch. There is still more content coming up. I will be working on a route planning video. And actually, one of my first videos ever on YouTube was a route planning video last year. But that's it for now. I'm Sid Vicious, and I will see you later.